Green card holders, stop scrolling. Urgent 2026 U.S. immigration update. A new USCIS rule could revoke your permanent residence, trigger deportation, or change your path to U.S. citizenship overnight. Watch this green card and immigration news breakdown before your status is at risk. This is Immigration Updates Hub, and today I'm breaking down a brand new immigration rule that has just been rolled out with real enforcement power behind it. No hype, no filler, no wasted time, just exactly what changed, who is affected, and what you need to do next. For years, many green card holders have lived in a gray area. On paper, they are permanent residents, but in reality, their day-to-day life is mostly outside the United States. They fly in once or twice a year, stay for a short period, keep a mailing address or a bank account here, but their home, their family, and their work are overseas. Technically, the law has always said that permanent residence is supposed to mean your main home is in the U.S., but in practice, enforcement has been inconsistent. That inconsistency is exactly what this new rule is designed to end. The government has now formalized a system that tightens the definition of what it means to maintain your green card, brings in new technology to track travel patterns, and introduces new paperwork obligations that every single permanent resident will have to meet. I'm going to walk you through all of it in detail so that by the end, you can clearly see whether you're safe, at risk, or already in danger without realizing it. Under the old practical standard, a lot of people operated with the idea that as long as no single trip abroad was longer than 1 year, they were probably fine. Some people pushed that limit, some relied on re-entry permits, and a lot depended on which officer you happened to meet at the airport. The new rule changes that in 3 major ways. It lowers the threshold for concern to 6 months. It looks at your overall pattern of time spent inside and outside the country over several years. And it adds a structured evaluation of your ties to the U.S., not just the number of days you were gone. Let's start with the 6-month rule. Under this regulation, any single trip outside the United States of more than 180 days, that's about 6 months, without proper prior authorization can now automatically trigger a residency review when you attempt to re-enter. That means when you come back, the officer at the port of entry will already see that you have been gone for more than 6 months, and the system will flag your case for closer scrutiny. But it does not stop at individual trips. The government will now analyze your travel over a rolling 3-year period. They will add up how many days you spent inside the U.S. and how many days you spent outside. If, over those 3 years, you spent more time abroad than you did living in America, you can be moved into what they call a review or risk category, even if you never stayed outside for more than 6 months on any single trip. Here is a very clear example so you can picture it. Imagine you travel to your home country 4 times a year, staying 2 months each time. That's 8 months abroad and 4 months in the U.S. each year. Over 3 years, that becomes 24 months outside and 12 months inside. Under the old, loosely enforced system, you might have gotten a few extra questions at the airport but often still been allowed through. Under this new rule, that pattern by itself is enough to trigger a formal residency review. And the consequences of that review can include denial of green card renewal, denial of citizenship, or even being placed in removal proceedings if the government concludes you have effectively abandoned your residence. Now, if you are someone who genuinely lives in the U.S. full-time, works here, files taxes here, and only travels abroad for normal vacations, short business trips, or brief visits to family, that 6-month and 3-year pattern test will usually not be a problem for you. But if your life is split or tilted heavily toward living abroad, you are exactly the type of case this rule is designed to catch. At the same time, the government recognizes that some green card holders have legitimate reasons to spend long periods outside the United States, job assignments, serious family medical issues, study programs, and similar situations. To address that, this rule modernizes the old re-entry permit into what they are now calling extended absence authorization. Think of it as formal permission to be away for a significant period without being treated as if you've abandoned your green card, as long as your reason is valid and properly documented. The key conditions here are very important. You must apply for this authorization while you are physically inside the United States before you leave. There is no option to file it from abroad. The application process is designed to be fully online, with typical processing times of around 60 days for most straightforward cases, so you cannot decide this at the last minute. You need to plan your travel knowing that this process takes time. If approved, this authorization can cover up to 2 years of absence in certain circumstances. Qualifying reasons generally include official overseas assignments from a U.S.-based employer, full-time enrollment in an educational program that requires you to be outside the U.S., serious medical situations or caregiving responsibilities involving immediate family abroad, and some categories of government or military service. If you know in advance that you will be gone for a long time and your reason falls into one of these categories, this authorization becomes a crucial safety tool. It is the government's way of saying, we know you're away and we accept that, without treating it as abandonment. However, not everyone will fit neatly into those qualifying boxes, and not everyone who spends significant time abroad will have that authorization in place. That's where the next major piece of this rule comes in, the formal assessment of your ties to the United States. Instead of counting only days, the new system tells officers and adjudicators to look at the whole picture of your life. They use a structured ties assessment that gives weight to different indicators of real, ongoing residence in the U.S. That includes whether you maintain your primary home here, not just a mailing address, but an actual residence where you live most of the time, whether you are employed by or get your main income from a U.S.-based employer or U.S. source business, whether you file your U.S. tax returns as a resident, which all green card holders are generally required to do, whether your spouse and minor children live in the United States, whether your children attend school here, whether you maintain active U.S. bank accounts, credit cards, investments, and other financial assets, whether you hold and regularly renew a U.S. driver's license or state ID, and keep vehicles registered and insured here, whether you receive regular medical care in the U.S. and maintain U.S. health insurance, and whether you have meaningful community connections, for example, involvement in local organizations, religious institutions, or community groups. All of these factors together create a picture of where your real life is based. A strong, consistent set of ties to the United States can help protect a frequent traveler by showing that they still genuinely live here, even if they leave often for work or family reasons. On the other hand, weak ties, a token address, a rarely used bank account, no tax filings, and family living abroad, combined with heavy foreign travel, will weigh strongly in favor of a finding that you have abandoned your residence. Alongside this, the government has invested in upgraded entry-exit tracking. For years, U.S. border control systems had excellent records of entries, but less consistent records of who left and when, especially at certain land borders. Those gaps allowed some people to quietly be away much more than they claimed. Under the new framework, every departure and every arrival is recorded and matched in real time. The system automatically calculates how many days you were out of the country, flags long absences, and highlights patterns where you are spending most of your time abroad. When you apply for citizenship, the officer reviewing your file will be able to see a complete computer-generated travel history summary, not just what you write on your application. When you renew your green card, your travel and presence pattern is visible in seconds. When you show up at an airport or land border, the officer will know in advance how long you've been out and whether this fits into a broader pattern of extended absences. This is why flying under the radar based on hope or habit is becoming virtually impossible. Now we come to a requirement that touches every single green card holder, even those who barely travel: the annual confirmation of residence. For the first time, permanent residents will be required to actively confirm once a year that they are still living in the United States and maintaining their status. This will be done through a short online form. Once this rule is fully in effect, you will have an annual filing window based on your birth month. If you were born in March, your confirmation is due every March. If you were born in September, it's due every September, and so on. On that form, you will need to provide your current U.S. address, your employment or income status, your tax filing status, and a certification that you are maintaining your permanent residence in the United States. You will also need to upload recent documentary proof, such as a utility bill, bank or credit card statement, lease, mortgage statement, or a similar document clearly linking you to the address you claim. The goal is to create a yearly, standardized check-in that keeps your record current and helps identify people who are not actually living here. If you fail to file this annual confirmation by your deadline, your green card will not be automatically canceled on day one, but your status will be placed on what's called administrative hold. That means your record is flagged as non-compliant. While you're on hold, you are more likely to face secondary inspection when entering the U.S. Your citizenship application, if you file one, may be delayed or paused, and your green card renewal application can be denied or put on hold until you correct the issue. Clearing that hold is usually not complicated if you move quickly. You submit the overdue confirmation, pay the specified late fee, and provide a brief explanation for why you missed the deadline. If you respond promptly and have no other major issues, the hold is generally lifted. But if you simply ignore it and do not file that confirmation for a year or more, your case is automatically funneled into a formal residency review, and that is where the risks become very serious. In a residency review, the government is essentially asking, have you really been living in the United States as a permanent resident, or did you abandon that status? This is not a casual phone call. It's a formal process in which you carry the burden of proof. You may be asked to provide multiple years of tax returns, detailed employment records and pay stubs, leases or mortgage and property tax statements, several years of utility bills, school records for your children if you have them, bank and credit card statements showing ongoing U.S.-based transactions, medical and insurance records indicating regular use of U.S. healthcare, vehicle registrations, proof of driver's license renewals, and other documents that collectively show a long-term, continuous life in the United States. You may also be scheduled for an in-person interview under oath, where an officer will ask specific questions designed to reveal the reality of your living situation, where you sleep most nights, where your spouse and children live, where your clothing and personal belongings are, where you work day to day, where you receive regular medical care, how often you are physically present at your claimed address, and whether you own or maintain a residence abroad. The officer will compare your answers with your travel records, your annual confirmations, or the lack of them, and your other documentation. If, after this review, they conclude that you have in fact maintained your residence in the United States, your case is closed and you keep your status, although you may be advised to limit future absences or keep stronger documentation. If they conclude that you abandoned your residence, your green card can be revoked, your eligibility for naturalization is cut off unless you start the entire immigrant process over again, and you may be placed into removal proceedings before an immigration judge. Now, let's talk about who is most at risk under this rule. The first profile is what we can call split residence green card holders, people who obtained permanent residence, perhaps through family or employment, but never moved their real life here. Their primary home, their spouse and children, and their main business interests are abroad. They visit the U.S. periodically, mainly to keep the card active. Under this new rule, that pattern is a direct target. The second group is retirees who worked and lived in America for many years, then moved back to their home country to retire, believing that periodic visits would be enough to keep the green card safe. With the 6-month threshold, the rolling 3-year analysis, the annual confirmation requirement, and the ties assessment, that strategy is now extremely vulnerable. The third group is business owners and executives who run companies with significant operations abroad and personally spend long blocks of time overseas managing them. Even if the company is officially U.S.-based, your physical absence can create a pattern that looks like you primarily live outside the country, unless you are very careful with documentation and, where appropriate, extended absence authorization. The fourth group is green card holders, caring for elderly or seriously ill parents or relatives abroad. These are often the most sympathetic cases, people spending months outside the U.S. out of duty and compassion. But immigration law measures days and evidence, not emotion. Without proper planning and documentation, repeated long absences, even for good reasons, can put your status at risk. The fifth group is remote workers who, after their jobs went online, decided to live abroad long-term while keeping a U.S. job and a green card. They may still be paid in dollars, deposit to U.S. accounts, and pay U.S. taxes, but their physical residence is elsewhere. The new rule makes it clear, working remotely for a U.S. employer from outside the country does not equal maintaining residence in the United States. If you recognize yourself in any of these profiles, this is the moment to act, not to panic, but to plan. There are several concrete steps you should take immediately. First, assemble a strong paper trail of your life in the U.S. Recent and past tax returns, pay stubs, employer letters, leases or mortgage documents, utility bills, bank statements showing consistent domestic activity, school records, medical and insurance records, and anything else that proves your ongoing presence and ties. Organize them by year so that, if you are ever questioned, you can quickly show a clear picture of continuous residence. Second, reconstruct your travel history as accurately as possible. Use your passport stamps, airline emails, old tickets, and any other records. Make a list of every trip outside the U.S., with exact departure and return dates. Calculate how many days you were abroad each time, and then add up the total per year and over the last 3 years. Compare that with the new 6-month and 3-year thresholds. If you find that you've spent more time outside than inside, or you've had multiple long trips, you need to take this especially seriously. Third, if you know that going forward you will need to be abroad for a long period to care for family, for a job assignment, or for study, then apply for extended absence authorization before you leave. Do not assume you can fix it later from outside the U.S., because the rule requires you to be physically present here when you file. Fourth, prepare for the annual confirmation requirement now, even before your first due date arrives. Decide which document you'll use as proof of address, make sure your name is on key bills or statements, and set calendar reminders in multiple places tied to your birth month so you do not miss the filing window. This is a simple procedure that can prevent an unnecessary administrative hold. Fifth, if your situation is complex, heavy international travel, family split between countries, remote work abroad, strongly consider consulting an experienced U.S. immigration attorney. A short, focused legal review of your travel patterns, your ties, and your documents can be the difference between staying safely compliant and slowly drifting into a high-risk category without realizing it. Finally, let's be clear about something important. For those of you who truly live your lives in the United States, you work here, your kids go to school here, you file taxes here, your home and community are here, this rule is not meant to punish you. In many ways, it actually benefits you. By tightening the definition of residence and actively clearing out green cards that are not being used as intended, the system can reduce backlog pressure, speed up processing for people who are clearly eligible for citizenship, and protect the value of permanent residence for those who genuinely build their lives in this country. Your green card represents a right that millions of people worldwide are still trying to obtain, the right to live, work, and build a future in the United States. This new rule is the government's way of saying that this status must be used as intended, as a real, permanent home, not just a travel document or a backup option. You've now heard the key changes: the 6-month trip threshold, the rolling 3-year pattern analysis, the extended absence authorization, the structured ties assessment, the upgraded entry-exit tracking, the annual confirmation, and the residency review process. Use this information, adjust your travel if you need to, strengthen your ties, keep your documentation organized, and if necessary, get professional legal advice tailored to your exact situation. This is Immigration Updates Hub, bringing you detailed, practical explanations of real immigration changes so you can protect your status and your future. Green card holders, stop scrolling. Urgent 2026 U.S. Immigration Update. A new USCIS rule could revoke your permanent residence, trigger deportation, or change your path to U.S. citizenship overnight. Watch this green card and immigration news breakdown before your status is at risk.